Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show. This is Mireille, and you know me as the Greatness Engineer. Today, we're going to talk about branding. So, I don't know if you have an idea of what branding is and how branding can impact what you're doing. We'll find out. My guest is we're going to the UK today. And just to give you a brief, she is a personal branding consultant, and we're gonna talk about building your brand, basically your personal brand, and that's gonna be the subject. So I'm not gonna be long. I'll just give her the opportunity to introduce herself, but make sure you have something to write on because I think you're gonna learn a lot today. So have pen and paper, and if you're watching live, please don't hesitate to ask any question or participate because this show is for you to learn, for you to take something on and share it. Not only share it, but apply it in whatever you're doing. So without further ado, we will start the show and bring my guest today, and you'll have the opportunity to learn from her and know who she is. So don't go anywhere. We are ready to start. Another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show, the show that is brought to you by the Mireille Global Leadership Organization.
Real is important is if you just look at the word compassion, when it's behavior, it's something that can be learned, and it is something that we can embody through habits and through our daily actions.
To get this idea that if we interject this wisdom intentionally, I call them needle movers. It's the needle mover that's missing.
Don't deprive the world of your greatness. Please. Don't do that anymore. Dare to excel, dare to be sexy, dare to be you, dare to be the best version of yourself. Impact yourself positively, and from there impact others. And you are not alone. So welcome. My guest today is Valerie Ellis, and I will leave her the opportunity to introduce herself. But please, if you're watching live, let us know where you're watching from. And also, like I said, you don't hesitate to ask any question. We're here for you. And please, Valerie, let us know who you are and what are the key things that you want to share with us.
Hello, Mireille. Thank you so much for having me on. And I'm coming from the UK. So we're totally global now, aren't we?
Yes, definitely.
So I'm Valerie Ellis. My business is called Personal Brandsformation, and my role is a personal brand consultant. So I help individuals who are trying to communicate a sort of mission and a message, get their whole personal brand system in place so that they can stand out in a very busy world that we're in now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it is a very busy world, and we get confused in all of this. So just to start the conversation, just wanted to ask you, what is personal branding? Because we really get confused with the marketing, with personal, anything that we see around. So if you can, let us know what personal branding is.
There is a lot of confusion, and I think it's probably good to start with what it's not. It's not a logo, and it's not a business card. It's not a business name. It's not a mood board with colors. And I think people confuse what that's called brand collateral. Or brand imagery. They confuse brand collateral and brand imagery with the brand itself. So it's not that thing. Just because you've got a business card with a logo on does not make you a brand. The question I always ask people is, are you a personal brand, or are you just a person with branding? And there's a lot of people who are just people with branding. So that's not what it is. To understand personal branding, it's probably a good idea to start with what branding is itself. So do you mind if I just take a moment to explain the background to that?
Exactly. Yeah, it would be very, helpful for the audience to know.
Sure. All right. So let's start from sort of first principles. Imagine a long, long time ago, a sort of ancient village where there's one baker, one dressmaker, one blacksmith. And if you want bread, you go to that one baker. If you want a horseshoe, you've got to go to that one blacksmith. If you want clothes, you've got to go to that one dressmaker. At that point, there's no competition. It's a monopoly, if you like, a long time ago in business. But if a village grows, eventually there's more people doing everything. The village ends up with 2 bakers or 2 dressmakers. And so what happens then? Where do people go for their clothes if there are 2 dressmakers? Well, usually people think then about going to the cheapest. So often the initial situation in business is that people start to compete based on price. They make the same thing and try to do it cheaper to get customers, to get clients, which of course is a disaster from a business point of view, because whoever's cheapest wins. And if both people compete, both of them get poorer and poorer. And even the customer loses in that situation, because the customer is then getting a less good product. You can't produce something more cheaply without cutting corners. So at some point, usually somebody in competition in business realizes what they've got to do is, instead of being cheaper, they've got to be different. So if you're a clever dressmaker back then and the village has grown a little bit, you think to yourself, well, I'm not going to make the same thing as my friend over there. I'm going to make something different. So I don't have to make it cheaper. I just have to make something different. And hopefully if I make something different, there's some people in the village who will want my thing. So that's the beginning of differentiation in business. But then, of course, the village grows and grows. It becomes a town. And a town would have many, many dressmakers doing many, many different things. So imagine now there's thousands of people and hundreds of dressmakers to choose from. Who does the customer choose? Let's start then to think about it from the customer's point of view. Who are these so-called customers? I don't like referring to people as customers or consumers. I think that's a very ugly way of conceiving of people. These are people. These are real people. So what are people? We people have evolved for millions of years to do one thing in particular. There's a reason we live in towns together. We have evolved to relate to each other. We are relationship beings. We're not we're not like pandas living alone for a year and finding a mate once a year. We live with each other all the time. There's a reason for that. We're evolved. Our brains have evolved to relate to each other. And the majority of our brain is actually devoted to relational activities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a clever business owner back in the town, and now there's lots of dressmakers, and you think about it from the customer's point of view, from the person's point of view, and you understand that about people, you start to realize that the relationship that you have with your client, customer, person is going to be key for them choosing you over the dressmaker next door. So you start being nice to your customers. Not that you were probably mean to them, but you start to especially focus then on service. And really, service is just business speak for having a relationship, having a better quality relationship. So that's sort of the next evolution in business, is service. And at the heart of this idea of service is, as I say, leveraging the idea that human beings like relationships. Around about the 1950s, the idea of branding was invented. So this was the next evolution in business. And what branding is after service comes the idea that the business is like a person. So if all the businesses are now competing on service, they've got affordable products, they've got differentiated products, they've got service involved. Now, how does the consumer choose one business over another? Businesses extending on that idea that human beings like relationships. We like relating to other humans more than bricks and mortar, more than businesses. Marketers came up with the idea of branding, which is essentially making a business seem like a person. Now, if you've investigated this idea yourself, or you've heard about marketing or sales or branding at all, or big business concepts, you'll have heard ideas like giving the business a tone of voice or a tone, giving a business values, giving a business an attitude or a mission. Now, businesses are buildings or collections of systems. Businesses don't have attitudes, values, missions, characters, tones. People have those qualities. People have missions, tones, characters, and values. So there's the insight. When you try to give a business those qualities, you're trying to make a business seem like a person. And that's what branding is. Branding is the personification of a business. It's making a business seem like a person. So it's branding is personification of a business. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, and it's important to specify that, because I mean, even myself, I always thought that branding, you had the personal branding on one side and the business branding on one side. So that's why, the personification of the when you say branding is the personification of the branding of the, of the business, it means that, they all go together, your personal brand and your business as well. So that you basically have your personal branding, becoming in a way, the major impact on the brand, on your business brand, if I got it right.
Yeah, well, personal branding is sort of the complement to that. So if branding is trying to make a business seem like a person, if it's the personification of a business, then personal branding is, if you like, the businessification of a person. It's the businessification of a person. So if a branded business is a combination of the business part of things, the systems of business, and personhood, like trying to make it seem like a person, we just turn that around for personal branding. We say, well, look, you're already a person. So you've got the person part. We just need to businessify you. And what's involved in personal branding is essentially amplifying the person, amplifying the personhood of someone, crystallizing who they are, what they stand for, and then adding the business element to it. So we're doing the same thing, but in reverse. Personal branding is businessifying the person. Branding is personification of the business. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. So I hope it's clear for for those who are listening. Just to say hi to we have so we have Mentor from Albania listening to this conversation. We have Adigun from Nigeria watching the show, and is just saying that branding is critical, and that's my next question is that what's the impact, really the real impact of branding? I mean, what do you gain from not being branded to branding yourself? Is there a measure or something that we use to say, okay, I'm branded and I'm seeing something, I'm gaining something from it?
So there's a phrase out there in entrepreneur world. There's a phrase, people follow people, or people buy people. I was in a networking event, and there was a lady who does marketing, and I said, oh, what do you do? What's the scope of what you do for people? She said, oh, well, various things. I said, well, but specifically what? And she said, well, lots of different things. Depends on the person. And she was very unclear about what she did. And I said, oh, it must be hard then to get clients if you're not really clear about what it is you do. And she said to me, oh, well, people buy people. And I thought, oh, do I believe that? She's not convincing me here. I'm not convinced by this. And I thought, well, okay, if I'm not buying exactly what she's saying, what do I think's really going on here? And I think she was missing something. What I think is true, one of my phrases is, people buy people who stand for something. So you're not just friends with anyone, are you? You don't buy anybody as a friend. You don't follow anyone as a friend. You buy into certain types of people, usually certain types of people who you share values with or a mission with. So people don't buy people. People buy people who stand for something. So part of the process of personal branding is figuring out what you stand for. So in the process that I use with clients, the second step is what I call principle. You have to find your principle, the thing that you stand for, because people will follow you, buy you, rally around you, whatever you want to call that. When you stand for something, they want to follow someone with greatness, and great people are standing for something great. So that's when you say, what does branding do for us? What does personal branding do for us? What it does is helps us crystallize what we stand for, so that other people can decide whether they want to stand with us for that.
Fantastic. And that's powerful, because it is about values. It is about what we are, in a way. So it's important that we grasp the importance of branding, because otherwise we're just not adding anything or having any impact the way we want for reaching our goals. And that's very important. So we're gonna have a break, but just gonna say hello to Nasreen. Nasreen is watching as well. Hey Nasreen, thanks for being with us. And please don't hesitate if you have a question for Valerie, don't hesitate. We just gonna have a small break, and we'll be back to continue this very, very interesting conversation. So don't go anywhere. We are back with Valerie, and we are talking about building our personal brand. And there's been, a lot of things, that I've learned already because, like I said, a lot of us get confused with branding, and I'm getting clarity today. I'm happy, I'm having you as a guest. So just to be bold, what do you think are the do and don'ts of branding?
Don't be bland. So the opposite of brand is bland, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, you need to let's go back to what I was saying about the process of how commerce develops. One of the first things people do after they compete on price is to differentiate. So the same is true for us as personal brands. We have to be differentiated. You've got to stand up for something. You've got to stand out for something. So don't be bland. But following on from that, another mistake to make would be to assume that when I say don't be bland, it means you have to be the most razzle-dazzle, life and soul, big, enormous, loud person out there. That's not true either. So, you've got your impressive personal brands like Kim Kardashian, Barack Obama, Robin Williams was big and bold and hilarious. These are life and the soul, kind of attention-getting people. But if you think about, there was a recently Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, I think his name is. He lived in France. He was a Thai monk or from Asia, and an extremely quietly spoken man. Said very thoughtfully, very simple, important ideas, very quiet, wasn't dashingly handsome, didn't drive a speedboat or anything like that. So not a show off, but he had millions of people listening to him, and he was quiet. So he stood up for something, he stood out for something, but he was quiet. So don't worry that personal branding and standing out means you have to be razzle-dazzle. You can still be quiet and concise and calm and stand out. It's the standing out that's important, though.
So basically, the standing out in branding is really the most important thing that we have to focus on. And I think it's right to say that you're not expecting, as for branding, to have people to go crazy, because there's standing out, but it doesn't mean that you have to go crazy and start doing something that is outrageous. It still have to be into a certain way, and follow a certain rigor and a value system, because that's very important. So I mean, we've seen, I was talking about the world getting really noisy. We are in the middle of a fourth industrial revolution. There's so much happening. There's a lot of uncertainty. Everything is volatile. And so what are the trends, in terms of branding when we are in such a uncertain and volatile world? What are the trends?
So certainly there's a big trend in terms of the women's movement. So women are getting a lot more attention globally than they used to. In the art world, for example, there's a big trend for collecting women artists. So that's a really interesting direction. Being female, there's consideration paid for you. And sort of coming off the back of that is also people in minorities, disabled people, gay people. So these are shifts away from the sort of white Western male view of the world, that perspective was the only perspective and the valid perspective of the world, and it's shifting away from that. So that's a big trend in social media, and social media is a really good example of why personal branding works. People are following other people, and social media has exploded in a way that television never did, radio never did, because with television you followed a channel, and a channel isn't a person. But now people are obsessed with following other people. So it sort of proves the point that people like to relate to other people, and personal brands, when you get it right, can really attract a lot of attention. But the other thing to bear in mind is that there are what they call micro influencers or micro brands that can have a very big impact. You think of Greta Thunberg. That's a very small human being having a massive impact and being interviewed on traditional television. So it just goes to show that if you get what you stand for right, and the timing is right for it, you can challenge global cultural norms and be someone that traditional media actually chases after for your perspective on things.
So how do you get, because that's the thing as well, is that how do you know this is the moment? Is there a process that you go through? Do you have tools that you can share, or how does it work? Because, sometimes you might actually feel like it's the moment, but it's not. So how do you reconcile, that and really seize this moment and know that this is the moment to start this type of branding, personal branding?
Well, let me go back a step in terms of this idea of the principle, the thing that you stand for, that how do you know what it is you stand for? There's very few things that wouldn't find an audience now. The trick is to be authentic about what you stand for. So I think it was Brené Brown who popularized the idea of being authentic. But what the hell does that actually mean? I think what it means is understanding the essence of who you are. And I don't mean in a sort of fluffy, unclear way. My background's in psychology. So I've got a degree in psychology, and I was a therapist for 20 years. So when I say understand the essence of who you are, I mean understand your personality traits. And there's lots of personality assessments and tests out there that can help you clarify who you are as a personality. So a trait is a quality that something has. So a trait that humans have is, for example, hair color. We've all got, well, most of us have hair, and it has a certain color. So hair color is a trait. It's inherent in who we are. We're born with that reality. Personalities have traits as well. Because you can't touch it, it seems as though our personality is something that's kind of being made up as it goes along. But that's not actually true. Our personality is biologically determined, like our hair is. So there are certain personality traits that you need to understand about who you are. And by understanding them, what I do with clients is we try to find the traits that are the most extreme ones about the person. They're the essence of who they are, the ones that really characterize the person. And from those traits, combined with a couple of other things, we then get to that idea of the principle. We then get to the idea of what it is you stand for. So in the process that I use, we start with personality. We start with a personality test, and then we principle that evolves out of that personality test.
All right. So there's a comment here from Ali. Is watching as well, and what he's saying is that personal branding mostly develop social pressures. So how do you what's your view on that?
Can he make that comment a different way, or can he? Is it Ali? Can you write that more as a question? Because I'm not exactly clear for what you mean by personal branding mostly develop social pressures. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah. So Ali, please, if you can clarify, your statement, or if you can ask a question, that would be really great for us. So and that's I mean, and I think is actually, even if it's unclear, is raising a point, because we've seen, especially in a competitive world like we are living right now, people getting pressure to look good, to to push their brands through, and it ends up with, you have people who are really, under pressure, and mental health is now on the, on the rise. So what do you think about that? I mean, it's kind of
it's an interesting issue. Here's an interesting thing though. In psychology, there's something called observation bias. So or cohort bias. That when you look at a certain group of people, you're seeing trends only in that certain group of people. It's not population wide. So what do I mean with that with regard to social media and social pressure? Well, bear in mind, when you look at Instagram, you're only looking at the people on Instagram, aren't you? You're not looking at all the people who aren't on Instagram. They're not on Instagram feeling that pressure. So the people on Instagram are opting into that pressure. I mean, I met someone the other day, a 30-year-old, who I would have assumed would be all over social media, like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. They said, "Oh, I'm not into social media." And I was absolutely staggered, like really, really blown away that this 30-year-old, again, this is a middle-class, white, Western person who has all the access to this, just doesn't do it. So that's really worth remembering, that not everyone on planet Earth is buying into social media pressure. And not everyone who's on social media is buying into pressure. So not everyone on social media is on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all the other platforms. They're not on all of them necessarily. Some people are, absolutely, but not everyone is. So, and again, let's narrow that down another step. Let's take Instagram as probably the area that I'd be most familiar with in terms of social pressure. Not everyone on Instagram is even buying into the social pressure. So there's plenty of people on Instagram who are just watching. They're not putting out material. They've got accounts with one photo on, and they're watching other people. They're not performing. They're not showing off. They're not getting surgery. They're not, getting their body parts out to show the world what they've got. So, you've got to realize, you know what I mean, don't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've got to realize that the 500,000 girls and boys on Instagram who are flaunting it, these are not a representative group of humanity. Not some grandma from Mongolia. Like, she's not on Instagram worrying about how shiny her hair is, or whether she's got the right lipstick or anything. So I think let's put the social pressure thing in the biggest context, which is planet Earth. Not everyone is on Instagram. Not everyone on Instagram is performing, and not everyone, even who's performing, is doing the classic Instagram stuff. Media, the traditional media, attacks Instagram because it wants part of the market share. So it shows all the girls with their stuff out, and it shows all the guys leaning back on a Bentley or a helicopter, and mocks them and says, "This is Instagram." Well, it's not Instagram, really, is it? Like, I'm on Instagram, I'm not leaning against any helicopters. So that's a very small number of people who are opting in. No one's got a gun to their head. They're doing it to themselves. And there's a kind of Instagram counterculture. There's a lot of people on Instagram who are making fun of those people. So certainly at the beginning, it probably did attract teenagers who are very impressionable and sent what I would think is not a healthy message. But there's a counterculture on Instagram now, which is people making fun of those people making fun of the big lips and the other big parts, and and the Bentleys and the helicopters and all the rest of it. And they're providing a balance. So if you're now a 15-year-old going onto Instagram, you're going to see that stuff. You're going to see the helicopters and the big lips and the makeup and all the rest of it. And good for them. Yeah, they're choosing it. You know? But the person going on Instagram now is going to see the Instagram counterculture. They're going to see the people making fun of that. They're going to see people who are normal, ordinary, not weirdly distorted, beautiful, hyper human beings. So now we have a choice. There's a whole palette of people on Instagram for you to choose from, for you to identify with. So I think social pressure probably peaked maybe a year or two ago with Instagram. Now, if you go on, there's no pressure for you to be one way. There's a whole variety of ways that you can choose from to emulate and be.
And I think it's also due to probably to the pandemic. I don't know what you think about it, because at some point, you know, social media was just for a certain, you know, a certain part of the, you know, the population. But because of you know, the pandemic, people working now using the digital to work and to communicate and to, you know, to even, you know, talk to their families. It became, you know, a translation of the real world with real people, because it's not about, you know, faking it anymore. It's real life, because we can't see each other, we can't travel, we can't go to the office. And I think that's probably the shift that that we see right now. I mean, that's what I think, the shift that we see right now. And one question that I have, because we've seen obviously a lot of businesses, because, you know, the audience is, you know, small businesses during the pandemic, moving a lot of their operation online. So how do the branding, you know, because obviously the branding should be done differently. So how do you think, you know, they can, you know, optimize or even, you know, rebrand themselves, because that's a different setting, a different platform.
I think social media actually gives you an excellent opportunity to brand clearly. So if you're a personal brand, you need to know who you are and what you stand for. If you're a business, then there's not a who, there's not a personality. You have to make it up. That's what branding, as I said, branding is. It's the personification of a business. So you have to make that identity up. You have to give it a principle, something it stands for. And if you're a supermarket, it might just be good value for money. You know, when we're talking about principles, we're not talking about, it's not all sort of high and mighty, complicated things. Supermarkets stand for things like good value for money. There's a brand or a business in England, a Clark's Shoes used to be here. They just stood for quality children's footwear. You know, so the principle, the thing that you stand for, doesn't. I mean, it can be high and mighty. Go mad if you want to. You know, but it can just be something very simple. But once people know what you stand for, then they can recognise you. You know, and that has to then be crystallized into a message. So the last part of the branding process that I do with clients is to clarify into what I call your presence. Like, what's your presence in the world? What's your public image? What's the message that you're sending? You have to be very, very clear about translating your principle into messages. It's all very well to say we stand for quality children's footwear, or we stand for, you know, good value in food, or whatever else. You can't just say that. You can't just say that to camera and expect people to get excited about it. It has to be said in certain ways. And I think what digital media does well is it helps you crystallize that message. It's, you know, there's only two things. There's only really two ways to say anything: words and images. Words and images. That's it. So you need to translate your principle into the words that clearly, entertainingly, usefully, convincingly explain what you're about. And then, probably a little trickier, is taking those ideas and put them into images that are either still images, photography, or videography. And of course, digital media is exactly set up for that. It is essentially words and images moving around in front of you that either encapsulate an idea well, a principle well, or don't. And so that's what digital media does. It gives you the opportunity to clarify your message, but that's the trick, isn't it? To clarify it.
Okay, so I have a question. This is Ali again. He's asking, is Bill Gates a brand of Microsoft or Microsoft a brand of Bill Gates?
Oh, that is such a great question. Ali, that is a genius question. I absolutely love that. You need to make that into a post and stick it on social media, because you would get answers to that. I love that question. Doesn't that just says it all, doesn't it? Is Bill Gates a brand of Microsoft or Microsoft a brand of Bill Gates? Well, well, let me take a stab at it. From a narrative point of view, Bill Gates must be a brand of Microsoft, because everybody knew what Microsoft was before they knew about what Bill Gates was, right? So Microsoft was the thing. They had well, they were a business. Let's start with that. Initially, they were a business. They weren't a brand. So they had a logo and they had products and they had customers and they delivered and all the rest of it. At some point, they turn into a brand. At some point, they become personified. And that's when they start getting, sounds associated with them, jingles, music, adverts that don't necessarily show the product, but show happy people using the product. So at some point, Microsoft goes from being a business into a brand, a thing that feels like something you can have a relationship with, But no one knew who Bill Gates was. I mean, I'm sure some people knew who Bill Gates was. But at that point, that wasn't what the public was paying attention to. And eventually, Bill Gates becomes a personal brand. So he sets aside being the guy who runs Microsoft and starts his philanthropic efforts. And at that point, he has to build his personal brand. So before that, what was his principle? What did he stand for? He stood for, I sell you computers, didn't he? Or I sell you software. Once he's philanthropic, he stands for something else. So there's an interesting moment in personal branding, isn't it? He's got to brand himself. And we know that branding yourself means finding the principle that you stand for. And the principle that he stands for is philanthropy and humanity and progress and education and healthcare and equality and things like that. So you know that he's a Microsoft guy, but you don't think of him that way now. You think of him from a philanthropic point of view. I mean, I don't want to be controversial. I'm sure I know there are people who have a lot of different perspectives on this, but looking at it very simply, his personal brand is built on the principle of his philanthropic ideas. So, and I think to more fully go to Ali's absolutely genius question, these are now two separate things, aren't they? Microsoft is a brand, and Bill Gates is a brand. And you could, if you were very young, encounter Bill Gates and have no idea that he was linked to Microsoft. I'm not saying that it's likely, but you could encounter Bill Gates and go, well, he's a guy. Look at that guy. He's a person. He's a personal brand. And he stands for this. Wow. Look at all the people who follow him, and not link him back to that. So now that at some point they separate out and they establish their own brands. So brilliant question, Ali. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, from what you're saying is that branding is dynamic. It's not something static. It's you have to adapt it to what you're doing at a certain moment. If am I getting it right, or is it something different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people notice inconsistency though. So I would argue that it's dynamic to the extent that you're evolving, but it's not dynamic to the extent that you're inconsistent. So dynamism implying movement. If you're moving and evolving, if you're changing and growing, we see this with movie stars. They start very young and they grow and grow and grow, and we see their evolution, their growth. People are okay with that. What people aren't okay with is inconsistency. And I mean, anyone who's been on social media knows that it's vicious when people appear inconsistent and hypocritical. So be dynamic if you're evolving your ideas, but make sure you're not inconsistent and unclear. So once again, you've got to have some clarity on who you are, who you really are, not who you'd like to be, not who you hope to be, not who others expect you to be, not who you admire and would like to copy, but who you actually are, and then find that principle that grows into.
And that's the problem that we see right now. A lot of people want to copy because you see a certain brand working, so you say, okay, I'm just gonna copy because I want to be as successful as this person, or as as beautiful as this person. And it can backlash, actually, and that's something that is really important to mention. So we're gonna have another break, and we'll be back for the last part of the show. And I really like the interaction and the question, and this last question was really a great one.
Genius.
And so we thank you, Ali, for this question. So anybody watching, you see there's there's a lot of learning, good insight from you guys as well, and helping this conversation that is really very insightful and at the same time inspiring in a way. So don't go anywhere. We're going to have a short break, and we'll be back So we are back. We are back with Valerie. And one question, Valerie, that I'd have, because we, getting to the end of this conversation, just want to, to know what is, the key message that you want to leave the audience with as far as personal, brand building is concerned. Something that you think they really need to know, and they really need to implement, or they really need to have, that in their mind.
I use what I call the brand bridge system, and I use it because your brand is a bridge between you and your client or customer. So you live in one world, your potential client, customer, follower, whatever you want to call that, lives in another world, and there's a gap between you and them. Your brand is the bridge that bridges the gap between your world and their world. And if you're an expert, an advisor, a coach, a consultant, what you're essentially saying to the world is, I know something you don't. What you're saying to your audience is, I know something you don't, And if you knew what I knew, your world would be better. So you need to come from your world into my world. Well, but how does someone go from their world into your world? They go via a bridge, a brand bridge. So your brand is a bridge between you and the customer, you and the client, you and your audience. It's a way of inviting them in. So from their point of view, it starts with your presence, the presence that you have in their world, how you land in their world, is the first way that they encounter you. But that's the last part of your brand. So if you imagine a bridge between one place and another, on one side is your personality, then your principle that you stand for, then your products and services that you deliver, then your platform, and then your presence. But from their point of view, they encounter you first in your presence in the world. So you start from one side and work over to their side, but your potential client works from their side back over to your side. So think of your brand as bridging the gap between your client's world and your world.
Mm-hmm. So that's very powerful, because I don't think, a lot of us have been looking at it that way, as a bridge, and, obviously a bridge leads you to something, and that's very important, which means that we you have to connect them, because if there's no connection, it doesn't happen, and nothing, you get nothing from it. And I think that's where the authenticity probably comes in, and help in this process. Wow, I've learned so much today. Unfortunately, 1 hour is always, it goes really fast. And just wanted to ask you, is there, anything that especially for people who want to continue this conversation, or even, try to understand how, they can, get your help, how do they connect with you? And is there any program or anything that you want to,
So you can connect with me on Instagram. So if you look, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt you, Murray. It was juddering, so I thought you were finished. Sorry to interrupt you. So on Instagram, it's Personal Brandsformation. On LinkedIn, Valerie Ellis. So we can just connect there. That's fine, and we can keep up with each other. I've also got a free guide for people. So no hooks, nothing like that. So it's a guide to how to structure your personal brand. So I think we'll either put a link to it in your show notes, or if you go to my website, which is personalbrandsformation.com, you'll see something that'll invite to give you the free branding guide. So you can have that for free from me. It's a gift from me to you, because I want everyone to be everyone who wants to be a personal brand. I want you to be successful, because we can change the world that way. And I'm actually just starting, instead of working one-to-one with clients, because typically I've worked one-to-one building clients' brands for them and taking them through this brand bridge process. But I'm really excited to actually open this up to more people. So I've actually got a private members club just starting. So there's a founding membership fee, which is the cheapest it will ever be to join. It's very affordable, very fun and affordable. So if you have a look on the website, you will find the private members group for Personal Brandsformation. You can join for the founding fee price. And what we're going to do in that group is we're going to go through the system one by one over time to clarify your personality, your principle, your products and services, your platform, and your presence. So it's all built as a nice, simple bridge for your audience to climb over and get to you. And it's a lot more affordable than working with me consulting. So you can consult with me, I can help you do it one-to-one, but this is going to be very affordable for people to join the group. And of course, it's fun. It's nice to do this with other people and build your brand with others and get help from other people as well. So I'd like to invite anybody to have that free guide, join the group. And even after this podcast is aired, if you find this afterwards, we're going to be rising the price once in a while. So at whatever point you find the group, rest assured in 6 months' time, it'll be even more expensive. So join now to get the personal branding process in a fun and affordable way.
So I've just put the website here. So whoever wants to, get all the information that you mentioned, they can just go out, and I will put in the comment section as well, so that anybody can access it and then connect with you, or get more information on the group services that you're offering, and continue. They can also connect with you and continue the conversation about building their brand. So it has been a very informative and insightful session, I must say. And I hope that the audience, whoever has been here with us, and anybody who's gonna actually listen to the show later on and watch the show later on, they'll also get all this knowledge, and please share it, and make sure you connect with Valerie if you need any more information, or if you need her service, because that's a quite critical. I mean, it's critical. Branding is critical right now. Like I said, we are in a very volatile world. Things are changing all the time, so it's important that we have our branding right, especially as entrepreneurs, and even when we work for in the corporate world, to be able to create this bridge between us and the client or the customer that we want to reach out. So thank you, Valerie, for being with us today. And hopefully, I mean, I'll we get to have a conversation outside the podcast. Outside the podcast, we'll stay connected anyway. And yes, so unless if you have anything, something that is still burning, that you want to share, if not, we'll just call it a day, and end the show. And I will be back for another episode of the Greatness Hour show on Monday. And on Monday, we're going to talk about unshakable faith. It is I'm going to host one of the co-author of the Unshakable Faith Anthology book, and we're going to talk about our own personal experience building our faith and making it unshakable. And there's going to be as well a lot of events as well. So tomorrow there's a royalty tea party conference that I will be so please join me. If there's you can you buy your ticket on even Bright, and join us to for the party. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much, everyone. And I really want to thank Ali, Nasrin, Adigun, and Mentor to be with us today live, and to participate, and help us to build, this conversation to something very meaningful. So thank you very much, and see you soon.
Bye, Mireille.
Bye bye.